There is a specific kind of actor that every great film depends on, and almost nobody ever thinks about. Not the lead. Not the star whose name is above the title. Not the one whose face is on the poster. The other one. The one in the third scene who makes the whole threat feel real. The one whose first line of dialogue tells you exactly how much danger the hero is in. The one who, 15 minutes into the film, you've completely forgotten is acting because the character feels too specific and too inevitable to be performed. Michael Byrne was that actor for 6 decades, over 170 credits, more than 60 years of craft applied, consistently and without complaint, to the task of making other people's films better. He died on June 20, 2026, in London. He was 82 years old. His cause of death was not disclosed. His former wife, Carole Nimmons, the woman he had met on tour in 1962 and married in 1965, had returned to care for him in his final days, despite the two having been separated. Their daughters, Tara and Bryony, and their 3 grandchildren survive him. The news took 10 days to reach the public. Announced on June 30th through an obituary in The Guardian. Not through a publicist's press release. Not through social media. The Guardian, the way it used to be done. You have seen Michael Byrne's face. You have felt his presence in scenes. You just never knew his name. This is his story. Michael Byrne was born on November 7, 1943 in Hampstead, North London, the son of a single mother. Helen Byrne, who had come to England from Kilkenny, Ireland. He was born into the final years of the Second World War, in a city that was still absorbing its damage and learning to reconstruct itself. He trained at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, one of the most prestigious drama conservatories in the United Kingdom. And when he finished, he did what serious theater actors do. He joined a repertory company and started learning the craft by doing it. Regional theater in the Midlands, Birmingham, Coventry, Nottingham, supporting roles in classical and contemporary pieces, night after night, in rooms of varying size and quality, building the foundation that would hold everything that came after. He met Carole Nimmons while touring with the Arena Theatre Company in 1962. They married in 1965. And in the early 1960s he joined the National Theatre Company, then newly formed under Laurence Olivier, operating out of the Old Vic on the south bank of the Thames. The company at that time included Olivier himself, Dame Maggie Smith, Robert Stevens, and a constellation of some of the finest stage actors Britain has ever produced. Michael Byrne was 20 years old, trained and hungry and learning from the best of the best. He would remain associated with the National Theatre for the rest of his career, not as a leading man, as the kind of actor who can do anything the role requires, who shows up fully prepared, who elevates the work around him by doing his work exactly right. He played Romeo at the Bristol Old Vic. He played Claudio in Much Ado About Nothing at the National Theatre. He played the title role in Roberto Miranda in Death and the Maiden at the Royal Court, opposite Juliet Stevenson. He played Maskwell in The Double Dealer. He appeared in The Cherry Orchard, The Seagull, All My Sons, Faith Healer, The Duchess of Malfi. He was, by every account of those who saw him on stage, formidable, present, someone who knew exactly what a text required and could deliver it without apparent effort. By the mid-1970s, Michael Byrne had begun building the screen career that would eventually make him one of the most recognizable faces in British and Hollywood filmmaking, even if most viewers could never put a name to that face. He appeared in The Eagle Has Landed in 1976, the Michael Caine and Donald Sutherland war film based on Jack Higgins' best-selling novel. He played a German inso with the requisite combination of authority and menace that the role demanded. He appeared in A Bridge Too Far in 1977, Richard Attenborough's epic telling of Operation Market Garden, one of the most ambitious Allied military operations of the Second World War. The cast included Dirk Bogarde, James Caan, Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Edward Fox, Elliot Gould, Gene Hackman, Anthony Hopkins, Laurence Olivier, Robert Redford, Liv Ullmann, and Maximilian Schell. Byrne was in that film, playing Lieutenant Colonel Giles Vandeleur, a supporting role, but a role in a film that now holds a permanent place in the canon of the war genre. And in 1978, he appeared in Force 10 from Navarone, alongside Harrison Ford and Robert Shaw. Here is the delightful footnote that Indiana Jones fans will appreciate. Byrne played a Nazi foil to Harrison Ford in Force 10 from Navarone in 1978, and in both that film, and in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989, his character met his end in a vehicle that fell off a cliff. Harrison Ford spent over a decade finding new ways to drive Michael Byrne's characters off of elevations. It is, in the history of recurring cinematic fate, one of the more specific patterns anyone has ever identified. In 1989, Steven Spielberg released Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the third film in the franchise starring Harrison Ford alongside Sean Connery as his father. It became one of the most beloved films of its era, earning over $474 million worldwide, and cementing the Indiana Jones franchise as one of the defining popular culture properties of the 1980s. Michael Byrne played Colonel Ernst Vogel. Vogel was the primary physical threat of the film, the Nazi officer who actually did the chasing, the confronting, the pursuing across Europe. He was cold and methodical and genuinely menacing. And he was the right kind of villain for this kind of film, not operatically evil, not theatrical, just utterly convinced of his own authority and completely willing to enforce it. One specific scene has been discussed at length by film critics and fans in the days since Byrne's death was announced. In the film's tank chase sequence, Vogel has Indy at his mercy. He holds Harrison Ford's face against the tank's treads, slowly grinding it against the stone. It is, in a film built on spectacular action, one of the most viscerally uncomfortable moments, because Byrne makes it feel less like cinema and more like something actually horrible is about to happen. That is acting. That is knowing exactly how much to hold back to make the threat feel real. He played the scene without a single false note, without going over the top, without trying to compete with Sean Connery or steal the film. He simply inhabited a ruthless man and let the camera find him. The film's own production notes highlight a detail that speaks to Byrne's commitment. He performed a significant portion of his own physical work in the tank sequences, not out of stubbornness, out of professionalism, because he understood that the character required it. After Indiana Jones, Michael Byrne did not rest on that role. He could not. That is not what working character actors do. He appeared in Braveheart in 1995, Mel Gibson's Oscar-winning historical epic, as Smythe, a violent soldier whose actions set the early moral stakes of the film in motion. It was a small role, and a dark one, requiring him to represent one of the film's most uncomfortable moments. He played it with the same professionalism he brought to everything, present, specific, fully committed. He appeared in Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997, the Pierce Brosnan James Bond film as a Royal Navy admiral. He appeared in Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York in 2002. He appeared in Apt Pupil, The Sum of All Fears, The Omen, The Saint, over and over in films that belonged to other people, making his contributions and moving on to the next one. And then, in 2010, came Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1. Michael Byrne was cast as the elderly Gellert Grindelwald, the dark wizard who had been defeated by Dumbledore decades before the events of the main story and imprisoned in Nurmengard, the prison he himself had built for his own enemies. It was a small appearance, but it was significant. Grindelwald was one of the most important characters in the mythology of the wizarding world. And the decision to cast Byrne in the role suggested that more of his story would follow. It did not. When the Fantastic Beasts prequel series was developed, Warner Bros. Cast Johnny Depp as a younger version of Grindelwald, eventually replacing Depp with Mads Mikkelsen. Byrne's version of the character was quietly retired without further development. It was the kind of thing that happens in franchise filmmaking, a polite erasure as one obituary put it, but an erasure nonetheless. He kept working. He played Ted Page across 67 episodes of Coronation Street between 2008 and 2010, Gail Platt's long-lost father, a warm, intimate piece of character work completely unlike the cold authority figures he was known for on screen. He appeared in Waking the Dead, Midsummer Murders, A Touch of Frost. In a notably touching detail, one episode of A Touch of Frost featured his real-life daughter Allie Byrne, playing his character's daughter. His final credits included The Archers on BBC Radio and The Phoebus Files. He kept working until he could not. There is a particular, often unspoken cruelty in the life of a character actor. You spend decades mastering your craft. You appear in films seen by hundreds of millions of people. You play the villain that the hero defeats, the authority figure the protagonist defies, the secondary character who makes the drama possible by being convincingly present. You do it well. You do it consistently. You do it professionally. And then the credits roll, and nobody knows your name. Michael Byrne had over 170 screen credits, spanning 6 decades. He shared the stage with Laurence Olivier and Maggie Smith at the National Theatre. He worked with Spielberg and Scorsese and Richard Attenborough and Mel Gibson. He was Harrison Ford's villain twice. He played Shakespeare and Pinter, and Chekhov and Carol Churchill. And the Statesman's obituary was titled, "You Probably Never Knew His Name." It is not an unkind headline, it is an accurate one. and it is worth sitting with, because what it describes is the particular and often thankless life of a working character actor. Someone who has spent their entire career making the work better and accepting, as part of the arrangement, that most of the credit would flow elsewhere. His representatives, in their statement following his death, emphasized 3 things they wanted him to be remembered for: his immense warmth, his talent, and his distinct sense of humor. Not his credits, not his blockbusters. The person. The human being who showed up to work for 60 years with warmth and humor and talent. Carole Nimmons, his former wife, returned to care for him at the end of his life. Their daughters Tara and Bryony, and their 3 grandchildren Tom, Chloe, and Jasmine survive him. There is a version of cinema that only exists because of actors like Michael Byrne. Not the version on the poster. The version where the hero's danger feels real. Where the authority of a uniform, a rank, an institution, is convincingly embodied. Where the scene where everything could go wrong actually feels like everything could go wrong. Not because of special effects or screenplay structure, but because the man standing opposite the star looks and sounds and moves like someone who genuinely has the power to end this. Michael Byrne provided that for 60 years. He gave Harrison Ford a villain worth defeating. He gave the Indiana Jones franchise one of its most memorable supporting turns. He gave Martin Scorsese, Mel Gibson, Steven Spielberg, and Richard Attenborough exactly what their films needed from him, scene after scene. He died on June 20th, 2026, at 82 years old at home in London, with the woman who had loved him since 1962 by his side. He worked until the end. That was the job, and he treated it seriously until he could not anymore. Most people never knew his name, but they know his work. In the dark, in a theater, watching a film about heroes, he was always one of the reasons the whole thing felt true. Rest in peace, Michael Byrne. The craft was lucky to have you. If you've been watching films for 20 years or more, Michael Byrne has been in your life. Drop a comment with the scene or the film you remember him from. Let's give him the recognition he deserved. Take care of each other. I'll see you in the next one.